And thank you also to Arianna Collins and Nick Russo, with whom I have the great pleasure of working and collaborating on a range of projects who are going to share about some of the ways in which they, in their own domains, use data collection by citizen scientists, or you could say community scientists, to support advocacy for social and environmental change for the better. Well, we regret that Ariana's not able to join us in person tonight. We are so grateful for her consideration of our health, and she is going to be tuning in and presenting remotely. So I will pass it off to Ariana.
Great. Okay. So, hello, my name is Arianna Collins, and I'm the Executive Director of the Hoosic River Watershed Association, hoorah, based in Williamstown, Massachusetts. I want to preface this presentation by saying I am an environmental educator with over 30 years experience, and I'm an administrator. I am not yet an expert in water quality monitoring. I look to hoorah's partners, advisors, and contractors to help me synthesize the data, or at least some of it. Some of it I can say, oh my gosh, holy crap. I like with the bacteria, I know those numbers. But we've got new numbers with PFAS, and I'm still learning about that. Anyway, next slide. The Hoosic River is over 70 miles in length, starting in Stamford, Vermont at the North Branch and around the Cheshire Reservoir in Lanesborough, Massachusetts in the South Branch. The branches meet in North Adams flood chutes and become the main stem. The Hoosic then flows northwesterly through Williamstown, Massachusetts, through Pownell, Vermont, and through New York State until the river flows into the Hudson River at Stillwater, New York. Hoorah tests throughout the watershed, but more heavily in Massachusetts, given we're based in Williamstown and due to historical funding support. Next slide. Hoorah offers opportunities in water quality monitoring, river and trailside cleanups, and public programming to introduce and deepen connections to the watershed. Our intention is to assist in public discourse and connection to the Hoosic River watershed, encouraging people to recognize the beauty, tenacity, and fragility of the watershed and why it's vital to protect the natural habitats in which we live and share space with wildlife. Next slide. Hoorah performs several water quality monitoring activities to assess the health of the river and the tributaries. We look at benthic macroinvertebrates, temperature, and pollutants. We take water samples to test for bacteria and metals. When we see high bacteria loads, we send samples out for DNA analysis. We take photo documentation. We send photo documentation to the Massachusetts Rivers Alliance to include in their monthly reporting to the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection regarding drought conditions. Our work informs you, the public, and local and state agencies about the health of the river and tributaries. Next slide. So from June into September, twice monthly, we take samples from the river and tributaries to test for E. coli. And coli is a gut microbe in warm-blooded animals, including humans. We also take field notes, jotting down the air and water temperatures, the weather conditions, and the smell and color of the river, along with any other river-related details we notice. E. coli may be just one pollutant in our waterways, but by knowing its presence, we can determine that other human-caused pollutants are also in the river. Even though geese may cause a temporary issue, it's our aging infrastructure that allows for fecal matter and whatever else we flush down the pipes entering the river. High bacteria counts are a hindrance to our swimming pleasure, but that's not the only issue. When pollutants are flushed into the river, our cleaning products and medicines have an adverse effect on riverine species, and Hoorah recommends that you look for non-toxic products for a healthier you and a healthier river. Now, next slide. Thanks. Every 2 weeks during the season, we post our results. This year, even though we didn't experience a high flow event, but we're in low flow, that means drought conditions, we still noticed spikes in the E. coli loads in the river. You can see that by the red numbers. A count of over 235 in a 100 milliliter sample would officially close a freshwater beach in Massachusetts. There is zero tolerance for E. coli in drinking water. As you can see, we have several sites on several dates with high counts. This is possibly due to drought conditions, either causing less dilution or accumulation of bacteria not being washed away. But it is odd given that we usually see these numbers right after a heavy rain event. Next slide. This is in part what a report from Jonah Ventures looks like for our DNA monitoring. We ran DNA tests at 5 of the sites we test for E. coli. Results came back indicating human caused. One interesting thing we are learning through this DNA sampling is that we can tell what humans have been predominantly eating. Case in point, given there are no pig farms in the area, swine was on the menu the day we sampled earlier in August at one of the sites in the North Adams flood chutes. When we spoke to the rep from the Jonah Ventures, where we get our samples tested, he stated that secondary species on the list usually indicate what was in the primary species feces. Next slide. Though I don't yet have the sensors to upload, you could see on the right hand side what a sensor looks like. So I don't have those yet to collect for the whole season. You can also see in the slides, we put them in housing to sort of to protect them, and that helps in some ways and heats up in other ways. So there's a bit of a trade-off. So anyway, when we look at when we were doing the bacteria sampling, we also took temperature readings, and as one would suspect, the water temperatures during summer in July and August were higher, and they were 19 to 21 centigrade or 66 to 69.8 Fahrenheit in the Hoosic. At 68 degrees Fahrenheit, brook trout become stressed, and then we start requesting people not fish while the water temperature is so high and the fish are stressed. In early September, we saw temperatures fall slightly, but there was also still low water flow, so that was still a stressor for the fish. A few of our cold water streams who still had flow tended to stay cooler between 56 and 59 degrees Fahrenheit in late August, so that was good. Hoorah has been collecting stream water temperature data in the Hoosic River watershed since 1999 with the objective to better understand the conditions that make the Hoosic a cold water fishery. We monitor stream temperature to assess how cold the water stays in the face of warming trends. And we suggest that if you live along a stream bank, consider planting native trees and shrubs to stabilize the riverbank against erosion and to shade both the bank and the stream to create a cooling effect. Next slide. Board members Wendy, Tom, and Mark have been collecting water samples for each season for the last 3 years to test for chloride and phosphorus in the Walloomsac and tributaries in Pownell and Bennington, Vermont. Samples are collected for the La Rosa Partnership Program, part of the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation, who is one of the many organizations contributing to the Vermont DEC's yearly reporting. Next slide. Last year, through Massachusetts Attorney General payout funding, Hoorah was able to expand our chemical profiling of the Hoosic. We started with 3 sites in partnership with Science on the Fly, and then this year we added more sites through our partnerships with Williams College and MCLA. We tested for calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, ammonium, bicarbonate, bromide, fluoride, chloride, nitrate, phosphate, sulfate, and pH. This is one of our 2 MCA interns in the chemistry lab at Williams College and our Lime Street address in Adams. Based upon the overall results, and I'm quoting Williams College professor and science lab supervisor Jay Riesla, that the chemistry of the Hoosic River, where sampled, is indicative of typical northeast, somewhat chemically hard water body with a calcium carbonate bedrock substrate. For those of you who don't know, Specialty Minerals works a limestone quarry in Adams, Massachusetts, right near this Lime Street site where we're sampling. The pH is relatively high with concentrations of base metals, calcium, magnesium, and sodium, and high amounts of chloride, probably due to road salts. Jay concludes that none of the chemistry results seen are of concern when compared with the 2022 Massachusetts surface water quality standards. On our website, we have a link to that report if you're interested. Next slide. We partnered with UMass Amherst to run lab on what heavy metals are present in the Hoosic and tributaries. Using 2 analytical techniques, UMass ran samples for several heavy metals, you'll see them listed, including aluminum, arsenic, cadmium, and lithium and lead. I asked Jay to interpret these results for me too, and he said based on the overall results, none of these heavy or basic metal values are of concern when compared, again, to the 2022 surface water quality standards. So you can check out the charts on our website, and I can provide links for that if you're interested. Though UMass lab couldn't test for PCBs, the Massachusetts Department of Health on their 2025 freshwater fish consumption advisory states not to eat fish in the Hoosic River from the channelized section in North Adams, the flood chutes, to the Massachusetts-Vermont state line due to PCBs and PFAS. Next slide. So PFAS is a group of forever chemicals that once is inside your body doesn't leave, and there's growing concern. And the reason I have these up is that Dark Waters is a 2029 docudrama about an actual case in West Virginia, and Hoorah will be doing a film screening on March 24th at Uno Community Center in North Adams. And then both of these books came out in 2025. So if you're interested in learning more about PFAS, these are really good resources. They Poison the World focuses on Hoosic Falls, New York, which is one of our 20 communities in the Hoosic River watershed. And there'll be a talk with the author, Mariah Blake, and then also Bennington College professor David Bond, who's been studying PFAS levels in the wells in Bennington, Vermont, next week. So Wednesday, October 22nd at 7 p.m. in Griffin Hall at Williams College. UMass ran the lab on PFAS at the same 10 sites they did for the heavy metals. And though 8 sites didn't show high PFAS counts, the sites 1 and 9, both northwest of Williamstown, just west of the Route 7 north, near the Hoosic Water Quality District wastewater treatment plant, those were higher. The values could be explained as runoff and are discharged from the wastewater treatment plant. If you want to, you can go to our website and click on the blog, and then the first one that will come up is the PFAS data. Okay, so for benthic macroinvertebrates, the last way that we assess water quality is by studying benthic macroinvertebrates, who are aquatic bottom-dwelling critters who are used to assess river health, given that some of them have very specific needs for clean water. You can see some of those critters here. Our 2024 report from Cole Ecological stated that the water quality of the Hoosic River, based on stream macroinvertebrate communities, ranged from non to slightly impacted. And then the scores in 2024 were similar to previous years at stations with prior sampling, suggesting that similar water quality conditions are across the years. What this means is that the Hoosic River and the tributaries tend to have conditions that to support clean water needing species. Hooray! Hurrah! So we'll have our 2025 report in late November, and you can read all of our reports at hoorah.org, and you can go to Hoorah and click on the monitoring, and you'll see our past reports. Next slide. All right, so what the river is teaching us is that our actions impact water quality, but the river is resilient, and we can help by fixing aging sewer systems, putting trash and recycling in proper receptacles, not dumping chemicals down sinks and toilets, and planting trees and shrubs along the riverbanks for shading and stabilizing. And my last slide just says thank you and has my contact information. So thank you so much for listening to me. And if you have any questions, I will answer them as best I can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Arianna.
My pleasure.
I have to say that I had some enormous fun going out with the Science on the Fly team that Hoorah contracted
Oh,
for a
good.
beautiful afternoon last year,
Yeah.
and learned so much and was glad to be the citizen scientist participating in that sphere. Yes, Jane.
Arianna, are you checking into where that human waste was coming from, where you found
That
really
is
high levels?
That is a great question. So we are still trying to backtrack where it is. In the flood chutes, it's harder. Like we can see actual pipes with the water. And so we have alerted North Adams about these high counts. And given the fact that swine was like one of them, I can only think that I mean, it couldn't be just one household. I'm thinking there's got to be a restaurant that was serving that like that night, and then a lot of people online were pooping and adding to that specific load. So we don't have specific like municipalities, businesses, or houses yet. That's really hard to determine. Our Lime Street site that I had showed you, that wasn't as high this year, and oddly, it was there's a stream that's coming into it, an unnamed stream that we hadn't been studying, but then one of our interns kept going last year and he was studying it and he was showing high counts. So we have been trying to follow the stream up, but this summer it was dry most of the summer, so we couldn't, and then Lime Street was not as high. So we don't know where along that tributary that who might be the culprit of like why there was a higher bacteria load last year than this year. So we are still trying to assess, and what we really need are more citizen scientists. So if you're interested in volunteering for Hoorah, we have wonderful interns that we get from both Williams College and MCLA during the summer and sometimes other times. But this year, once they were done, they're done. So we are definitely looking for some people to help us track these down.
Okay, so on to Nick.
Cool.
Oh, and I forgot to say, so thank you, Arianna, for introducing yourself. I should also introduce Nick, who is a senior transportation planner at Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. He biked over here from their office in Pittsfield, and he is going to be sharing, I think, not as much about the work with BRPC, although maybe you'll speak about that as well. But with his organization, which relies very much on using community input and data collection for thinking about the built environment as a set of design choices. So thank you, Nick.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we might not think of urban street as the environment, but it's the built environment. So it's something we can also gather data on. So I just have basically a few photos, and I can give you a nod to scroll through them as we go, but I don't really have any like slides. I was just going to kind of chat. So yeah, basically my day job is a transportation planner, which basically I work with Berkshire Regional Planning Commission to do traffic studies, grant writing. We work with the towns in Berkshire County to help them with any sort of complete streets initiatives, which is a state grant program, and other kinds of safety related studies, bike ped studies, all kinds of stuff. So this example was something more I just did as a sort of, again, citizen scientist, citizen planner, I guess you could say. I kind of have a volunteer organization I call the Pittsfield Community Design Center. So this is kind of under that umbrella. It's been a little more dormant lately this past summer, but especially with everything else I've been doing. But it's still out there, hoping to get it sort of, get it going at least either monthly capacity or send out some newsletters. So keep an eye out on that, hopefully in the future. This was a walk audit that we performed on this stretch of Dalton Ave. If you're familiar with Pittsfield, basically it's a section between Tyler Street. I should put a map in the slides here, but it's a section of Tyler Street, where the new roundabout was built, up to Benedict Road, where it turns into more of a highway, 4-lane highway on Dalton Ave. So there was a pedestrian who was crossing the street in this neighborhood in the summer, over the summer of 2025, and was struck and killed crossing the street. So we wanted to take a close look at this stretch of road to see what the factors were, what might have contributed to this incident, and make recommendations on how the city could improve. This is a city-owned stretch of road. The state highway doesn't begin until further down, past where like Zuko's restaurant is and Plastics Ave is, if you're familiar with that. So basically we wanted to work with the city. We were lucky to have the Commissioner of Public Services, who's in the orange vest there, to join us. And he's always very proactive in looking at these things. So we had a really great bunch of people to come and walk with us. We had a couple members of the press there too. So that was very nice. Let's jump to the next photo. So this is just kind of us starting to walk down, look at what the built environment was on this stretch of road. So we have a pretty dense neighborhood with these triplex apartment buildings, which are kind of unique in Pittsfield. You don't see too many of the triplexes like you might see in like a Worcester or Boston. So this is a neighborhood, like not just a pass-through area. People live here. There's a lot of shops. There's the Dunkin' Donuts. There's laundromat. There's a package store. There's a park and a condo complex up the street. A lot of reasons to go back and forth across the street here. So we wanted to see what it was like. We can go to the next one. So we collected just measurements and data on the street. So this is an example. We just brought a big 100-foot tape and measured the actual width of the road there. I think if you go to the next one, you can see more of the road. Yeah. And I forget what order I put them in, but this is another looking down the road from the other direction. So basically we measured those lanes as being, I think, 12 feet plus a little extra shoulder, like anywhere from 1 to 2.5 feet of shoulder on each side. It does open up to kind of this weird 3-lane configuration, kind of like right in this section here where it opens up to basically a turn lane, a through lane, and then the other direction. There's no bike lane yet, so you can kind of see somebody just cycling on the side of the road. People are being pretty generous and giving that 4 foot of passing distance, which is the law now in Massachusetts, thankfully. But you can see kind of on the far right, there's that truck that's parked in the shoulder. So even if you do bike in the shoulder, you're going to have to veer into traffic to continue on. So that can be a bit problematic. Let's look at the next photo. Yeah, here's a better example of what the street profile looks like. So I just sort of walked into the road and got this shot. So basically you've got 3 12-foot lanes, a little bit of shoulder on either side. And this is something we can look at. If we have time, we can play around with Street Mix, which is a great citizen planning tool people can use to look at how they can advocate for better street design. It's a really easy to use online tool to build a new street. We can take a look if there's time. So we basically just walked up and down this block. We did our measurements. We tried out this crosswalk here, which is interesting. It's got those traffic lights that are basically green 99.9% of the time until you press the button, which we thought was interesting because when it did turn red, people who were exiting from the Dunkin' Donuts drive-through like couldn't quite see the lights from the angle they were at, so they would turn and then like start heading towards the crosswalk even though the light was red. So it was a kind of an odd arrangement with those driveway aprons. So that was something we noticed that you might not have realized unless you walked and actually tried this block out. Let's see, what's the next photo look like? Oh, that was coming towards Dunkin' Donuts, and this is a daily occurrence. I think if people drive through here, it's just a complete zoo to try and get into the drive-through. The sidewalk gets blocked. People are pulling across, waiting in the road to turn in, which is also illegal. So we'd love to see there's some enforcement or some more design cues to make sure people don't back up into the road to cause either a situation if you're on a bike. What do? Do you cut into the right here and try and shoot the gap, or do you veer into the left lane where people are passing? Like, this is not a good situation, especially if we do want the bike trail to be continuing into downtown. What's this going to look like, you know? So just these experiences. This was, I think, Saturday late morning. So who knows what this could look like on a weekday morning if there's rush hour. It can be pretty dicey. Is there one more photo, I think? Yeah, we also saw this bench that was just kind of cracked. If you're waiting for the bus, you can't really lean it back against the bench or else it might just kind of fall over. So there is a bus stop that I've seen people wait at. I'll ride the bus sometimes to go out to either Allendale Shopping Center or Walmart, and people will get picked up and dropped off here to go to work. I've seen some Dunkin' Donuts employees, some folks going to Goodwill. So at least there's a bench to wait at, but there's no shade, and it's so old it's been cracked at this point. So basically we did this walk audit using the AARP Walk Audit Toolkit, which is a great resource for citizen planners and groups who want to just get out and do their own thing. I picked this copy up at, I think, like a convention I went to last year. But they offer this big guide of everything you can look at for assessing a street, especially from the context of retirees, the AARP. So making it all ages and abilities accessible. And they provide basically a set of checklists and just qualitative and quantitative sheets that you can go through. This one's for the sidewalks, the streets, and the crosswalks. They have one for just the street environment, like what the shade is like, what the sidewalk quality is like. They have one for, I think, multimodal for bikes and scooters. They have transit access. So we basically gave folks one of these clipboards each, and we walked around and we filled them out as we went. I still need to actually digest all this data and write up a report. It's been kind of sitting on my desk, but I think I've got a good motivation now to get this done before the World Day of Remembrance of Traffic Fatality Victims, which is in mid-November. We're going to be planning some sort of event around that, so keep an eye out. We did a great kind of a walk and talk a couple years back with the city of Pittsfield, who donated a ghost bike, which is basically a memorial for cyclists who've been killed in traffic. You'll see sometimes in bigger cities a white spray painted bike. It's like put up at an intersection where a crash took place. So we have one here in Pittsfield. We haven't put it up at any particular intersection. It's just kind of a general reminder. So we'll have that out next month probably. So yeah, keep an eye out. I'm going to work on digesting the data. Hopefully people on Zoom kind of see the clipboard here in the booklet. And have a little report about what we think the best steps can be for this street and what the city can do. There's short-term things, long-term things. We came to a couple of good conclusions during the walk itself. We had a couple of city councilors there, which was nice. And they suggested, actually, can we bump back a couple of photos? I'll tell you when to stop. Keep going. One more. One more. That's fine. I guess it might have been a block further up, but there was a truck that was parked basically right at the corner. And we noticed that if you were trying to cross the street here where the victim was hit, basically you had to be in the street already to get across. And any intersection, whether or not there's a painted crosswalk, if there are sidewalks on either side of the road, it is a unmarked crosswalk. So you can cross the street there. Whether or not safe, though, if there's a vehicle parked right up at the corner, you can't really see the sight triangles until you get out of the road already. So we noticed that was an issue when we were walking, and city councilor suggested they could pass an ordinance to make sure that there's proper signage that directs that 20 feet away from the curb is a no parking zone. So that's kind of a short-term easy win that we can look at. Further down the road, can we add curb extensions to make sure people do not park within 20 feet of the intersections? Can we add more crosswalks? Can we add rapid flashing beacons to the crosswalks to make them more visible as opposed to just the traffic light itself? So we're looking at all the options that we have available. So that's where I offer my experience. I went to school for civil engineering, took some traffic engineering courses. Definitely gotten a lot of experience just in the past 4 years at BRPC with Complete Streets, learning their methodology, their program resources. So my goal is to use both my day job, my office, and just kind of my advocacy to improve our streets and our built environment. But yeah, I think that's basically, my Walk Audit citizen science gathering initiative for this summer, hoping to do more. Not because of this reason where there was a traffic crash, but just in general, it would be great to collect data about our streets. I know a colleague of mine at BRPC has been doing a great job with called the Greater Green program. They do the Stride and Take Pride program where they send people out with stipends to actually just take notes about the block they live on, and they've got a pretty good level of data. So maybe someone like Jamie or Courtney could come in and talk about that level of data gathering at a future talk. And it's been a great resource to pull from that as well for my own purposes. But yeah, so that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Yeah.
I was really excited to have both Nick's perspective represented and what Arianna is doing, because while they are speaking about very different things, Arianna looking at wildlife and analyzing this river ecosystem, and Nick looking at the built environment, both inquiries carry such a deep curiosity and attempt at objectivity in analyzing the environment and the ways in which it affects wildlife, it affects humans passing through these spaces, and those two environments are not separate, but of course have profound interactions on the others. So I'm really grateful for all that you shared, and we'll look forward to circling back around with some questions.
Yeah. Kind of some parallels of like wading into a river or crossing a street, it's both kind of putting yourself into the different place where people don't usually go.
Yes, you're teeing me up perfectly, because that's what we talk about at Beat a lot, is these are two continuous and often intersecting ecosystems, the system of roads, the system of streams and rivers, and how do they interact. So with that, I will talk about a quick overview of what Beat has done over its 22 years of history, using citizen or community science as a real bedrock of the way that we do advocacy and push for social change in the community. So my name is Brittany Ebeling. I am the newly minted executive director, but I couldn't let go of featuring Jane Wynn here, who is Beat's newly retired executive director, and my colleague Chelsea. They're out doing an assessment at a dam removal happening in Pittsfield. So we are a small organization, as you know, and we are incapable of being in all places at all times. Right now, we have a staff of 5, so we need to be strategic about how and when and where we intervene to highlight a particular ecological harm or try to make a difference. And citizen science and engaging the broader community in collecting information about what is going on in our environment is a big part of how we do that. So everything we do at BEAT is grounded in a strong foundation of science, and we're always working to link on the ground realities we see in our neighborhoods, in our backyards, to up-to-date scientific and technological understanding. Why do citizen science? It's one thing to understand that the science at large suggests that a principle is true. For example, it's important for aquatic wildlife to be able to move up and downstream, or certain particulate matter in air pollution can cause detriments to human health, or forever chemicals like those that Arianna mentioned enter wastewater streams and are capable of contaminating the soil if applied as fertilizer. But these concepts are an entirely different thing when we begin to think about them as issues that apply to our community and actually merit organizing and advocating and making a change. Sometimes we also need more information about what to push for. For example, if we don't know where there's air pollution or water pollution happening in our community, we may not know where to apply pressure to certain industrial sources of pollution or pinpoints of water pollution in the community to encourage it to end. And we like to say that everyone is an environmentalist when the problem is happening in your own backyard, and collecting local environmental data is a means to demonstrate that there is, in fact, a problem and that something should be done about it. Even when in a community it's widely understood that there is a problem, data can tell a powerful story that links, for example, pollution to socioeconomic realities, or can identify responsible parties and place pressure on them to make a change. Also, when you involve the broader community in collecting data, you also mobilize people to care about an issue more deeply. If you go on a walk with Nick or go do water sampling with Arianna, you are more inclined to care about that local ecosystem. And we believe at BEAT that we choose to steward what it is that we love, and the act of deeply noticing by doing something like collecting data as a citizen scientist is a way of cultivating an ethos of care and inspiring advocacy. Next slide. So I wanted to just speak about some of the methodology we use and have used over the course of BEAT's history. We use all kinds of tools to collect data about the environment all around us. BEAT has a long history of working on river and wetland issues, including by testing for things like E. coli in the fashion that Arianna described, particularly at storm pipes, to identify what is coming out of a storm pipe if it has not been raining. What is that liquid? And doing things like identifying potential industrial sources of pollution. Another example is something that we highlighted just a few months ago when my colleagues Andrew and Drake shared at our most recent Green Drinks what they have been doing over the past 2 years, surveying air quality in Pittsfield using handheld monitors and a team of effectively citizen scientists going out and measuring particulate matter, among other things, in Pittsfield, and incorporating data from stationary monitors placed. So sometimes we have the opportunity to use highly attuned equipment that is able to pick up on some of these ecological realities in our environment. Another form of data that we rely on is public records, which is a form of data available to all of us through Freedom of Information requests. And sometimes the work of dealing with public records involves receiving a large data set of jumbled information or trying to map what is delivered to us in a form that is comprehensible and could inspire some form of action. Sometimes our citizen scientist data collection takes the shape of doing collective species identification, such as at our annual Biodiversity Day we just held in September. At that event, we use iNaturalist, which is an application that community members can use to make observations of species of plants and animals that they see within a 24-hour period at a given site, and allows for subject matter experts to confirm what a species is and log it for even research grade analysis of a particular area. Sometimes we also use qualitative data collection, not just trying to analyze quantitative information. And in particular, our work on environmental justice issues relies on understanding community members' desires, perceptions, and ideas. And sometimes we also do things like administer surveys and hold community discussions to help us understand the ways that pollutant exposure affects and interacts with quality of life determinants, things like how noise pollution, histories of redlining, and air pollution all interact to produce a particular experience for those living in a neighborhood. Next slide, please. So I wanted to just touch on 3 examples of BEAT's past work. This is one of our volunteer citizen scientists doing a particularly brave culvert assessment last year, I'd say. So something that we do is look at those road stream crossings that are critical for making sure wildlife can move, and we are prepared as a community to withstand flooding events and climate change. So we go out and assess the condition, size, and passability or impassability of culverts and bridges. And then we take that information and communicate with departments of public works, with municipalities and other stakeholders, which results in things like in Pittsfield, upgrading the Churchill Brook undersized culvert to a bridge that now allows for wildlife passability and will be better positioned to withstand a flooding event in the event of extreme weather. We also identify wildlife that pass through an area using things like tracking cameras, and BEAT was very involved in starting the Berkshire Wildlife Trackers group. So we rely on community members who are knowledgeable about identifying animal tracks and other signs of their recent presence in an area. For example, we have been pushing for the creation of a wildlife overpass where the Appalachian Trail crosses the Mass Pike in Beckett, and wildlife trackers have played a significant role in understanding who is passing through this area and what wildlife could benefit from a new and exciting improvement to the ecology of that space. Next slide, please. I mentioned that we do E. coli monitoring. Here was Nicholas, one of our summer, now fall interns, doing some collection of a strange liquid running out of a pipe when it had not rained. So our interns receive the full experience when they work with BEAT over the summer. And so historically, as many of us know, the river has been a dumping ground, and many most homes really were at one time discharging directly into the river. In some cases, this is still the case, and BEAT has identified some storm pipes over the course of its history where homes were, unbeknownst to them, directly depositing their raw sewage into the river. So sometimes just mapping the existence of infrastructure and what is going on there can be a powerful tool. Last slide, please, or second to last slide. An additional example of our work, I wasn't sure what to show for sludge without being gross. So here's me at the State House saying, don't do this. So we've also been doing advocacy trying to work with municipalities and the state and groups across the country. Some of you might have attended at Big Elm in Sheffield the Green Drinks presentation by Laura Orlando, who's a professor of public health at Boston University, who spoke about sludge. We were so grateful for what she shared. If you're unfamiliar, sludge is essentially the solid waste that comes from wastewater treatment plants and has unfortunately continues to be applied to agricultural fields as quote unquote fertilizer. Even though even one application of sludge to working lands can produce the existence of PFAS or forever chemicals at levels that are so toxic to human health, it should really never be allowed, even a single application. So we've been working on this issue and the ways that it is going to potentially affect our community in a significant way for years to come. Part of the data work we've been doing is working with community members, including in Williamstown right now, BEAT and community members doing public records requests and analyzing from Mass DEP. Although there is no requirement in Massachusetts to show exactly where sludge has been applied, we are reassembling the paper trail, the little crumbs of information that are available about where distribution has happened, where annual reports from treatment plants have identified the next step that it has taken on its journey to a field. And so we're also collecting, my colleague Andrew has been doing a number of interviews, collecting oral histories to build relationship and gather qualitative information to essentially begin in our minds forming this map essentially of where we think community members might be affected, need support, and where there's going to be issues of environmental concern in years to come. I think that I have one more slide. So all to say that we do citizen data collection in a variety of forms, but perhaps more important than the data collection itself is what we do with it, is the advocacy piece. And telling the story about what we find as citizen scientists. That sometimes involves working with elected or regulatory officials. Sometimes it involves enforcing the law when it's broken. And sometimes it's about working with media to tell stories about why we as a community need to mobilize to change our environmental impacts and to use those stories to build relationships toward social change, something that I think is the case in what Nick shared and what Arianna shared, and we can have discussion about that. So thank you. So I know there was a question for Arianna, perhaps there's other questions, so we can just informally have a discussion for the next 10-15 minutes. And oh, yes, thank you. So let's also incorporate those who are online. And for anyone who is in person, if you have a question, I will hand you the lapel microphone so that those who are online can hear your question. So I saw, Joni, you had a question. Would you like to start?
Arianna, I was just curious about when you say, talking about the temperature for fish, was it brook trout specifically, not to get stressed? What are the drawbacks of people fishing while the fish are stressed, specifically?
That's a good question. Well, one, they're a little bit less likely to bite, so they're a little bit more lethargic. So as a fisher person, you won't have as much of a fight with the fish because they're under stress and they're not feeling overly well. That's the main thing. So it's more like the relationship between the predator, the human, and the prey, the fish, that won't meet with as much success. Also, if you're doing catch and release, the fish is potentially more apt to perish after you release the fish because they're already stressed.
Interesting. Thank you. And Nick, then you were talking about the pedestrian who was killed, and that caused you to kind of do the walk down Dalton Ave. Was there an investigation into that incident? And do you know like the specific cause of it? Did it have to do with that turnout at Dunkin' Donuts, or was it like a nighttime thing? Or
There was a police report that I do need to do a FOIA request to actually get the details of it. But at least what was reported publicly was that it was during the day. I think it was like towards just the afternoon time. The pedestrian was walking south, which is like from the side of the street opposite Dunkin' Donuts towards I think it was on the like where Angelina's Subs is, on that intersection of like Dartmouth Street and Dalton Ave. They were walking south, and the driver was coming inbound towards downtown Pittsfield and struck them there. I don't know if there was an obstruction at the time, like a vehicle, or what the exact circumstances were. I don't think they didn't mention if speed was a factor. It was a pretty small, I think they mentioned it was just a sedan, like a passenger sedan vehicle. So the pedestrian was also elderly, I think in their mid-80s. I think both people were in their mid-80s, the driver and the pedestrian. So that's also a contributing factor to think about. But for more specifics, exactly the circumstances are, we would want to see the full police report, which I don't know if the investigation is closed. Sometimes those can take a little while if there's a fatality involved. Yeah, that's all I know for now, but I will get those details. I'll try and get those details before have a full report put out to see if we can get more info. Yeah, for sure.
And also, would you be able to like pass around that checklist? Because I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I can pass these around to start with. Feel free to thumb through the Walk Audit toolkit, which has all of these. They had these pages in here, and then this was just one page of like 4 that were clipboarded together. But yeah, I'm happy to pass around if you want to see what
Thanks.
I'm just like PFAS and sludge. I have no idea. Like, why and how does it get there? Like, is it in me right now? Like, does it travel into the sludge from me?
Yeah. Arianna, would you like to answer? And I can augment your answer. I know you've been doing a lot of work on this issue.
Well, it's certainly not enough because it's been around for a very long time. I mean, since like I think the 1930s, and a lot of the information from DuPont and 3M, they hid the results from like the EPA. It's been alarming. I actually just watched Dark Waters, which is the docudrama from 2018, based on the real case, because we're going to be showing it, and it's quite frightening. So it's apparently in 99% of the human population in the world.
I believe it.
It's in everybody and everywhere. It is the ways that we can get it. All the like Teflon. If you grew up with using nonstick pans, it's in your system. If you have been if you have been near a house fire and the fire station blew that foam that like takes that ends the fire, that's PFAS right there too. There are applications that have certainly been very helpful to humans initially, and now very hurtful to us. It has been shown to contribute to a multitude of cancers in humans. Based on the case in West Virginia, they have a continuing study to track people who were exposed to these chemicals. They were labeled as C8, but they're all PFAS.
So basically, we can't use our own waste stream anymore as like a fertilizer just because it's got PFAS contamination.
Definitely not. And
I thought that was a viable option to like dispose of our waste at one point.
Right.
No, because even go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
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 So maybe this is what you were also going to add, Arianna, but part of the problem is also the way in which our wastewater treatment supply chain combines things like industrial waste and household waste. And what Arianna said is absolutely true. We all have these contaminants in our bodies, and yet to do something like follow through that supply chain, which compounds the problem and then put it on an agricultural field. What some of the affected farmers in Maine, you might have heard, or others may have heard in Maine about sort of the first state in the country to really bring this issue to the fore in a spotlit political way, because there were a number of very brave farmers who came forward and identified that their fields had sludge laden PFAS laden sludge applied, and they did things like had blood testing, and learned that while we all have a whole range of contaminants in our systems, their bodies were so contaminated with PFAS. It was something, one of the people who testified at the Massachusetts State House with me said that he and his family, including his small children at the time, had PFAS levels that were something like 3,500 times what the average person would have in their body. It was insane. After a single application of sludge to land that he and his family farmed organically, and the farmer prior farmed organically, and it had been applied 2 generations prior. How many times? We don't know. Was it once? But the biopersistence of PFAS and application to the soil is, I think it's important to distinguish, or it can be an immobilizing idea to believe, oh, we all just have so much contamination in our bodies, there's nothing we can do. But this is actually of a magnitude and a distinction that doing this practice or stopping it can actually make such an enormous difference. And not all, I was comforted when Laura Orlando, as a scientist, espoused the idea that there is plenty of land that is also not contaminated. There is a really successful pathway with bumps in the road, but aggressive pathway that Maine has pursued to tackling this head on. I learned today from one of our coalition partners in Maine that the state is about to begin offering free PFAS blood testing to affected community members or people within a given radius of sludge applied land in Maine, which is incredible to see the state so supporting that work. And a little teaser is that BEAT is going to be doing some blood testing for potentially affected farmers in the area, because that data is such a powerful storytelling tool. So yeah, I'll start with that on PFAS in case there's other questions too.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, right, and I don't want us to give up saying, "Oh my gosh, it's everywhere." Like, why bother? But because there are activities that we can do that will help mitigate that. And if you're interested in learning more, as I mentioned, They Poisoned the World, the Mariah Blake's book. It's not a novel; it's science-based account of what was going on in Hoosic Falls, New York, which is, not that far away from all of us. I know you guys are in Pittsfield, but still, it's not that far away. That if you're interested, that's going to be next Wednesday night at I think it's 7:30. So I would definitely check that out if you're interested in learning more about PFAS and how it's affecting, communities in our region.
And actually, I just read that at the American Museum of Tort Law on the 28th, I think she's also giving another talk in Connecticut. So if that's closer to you, you can see her speak again.
A Museum of Tort Law. That sounds interesting.
Yes. It is founded by Ralph Nader.
Yeah.
Any other questions online or in person? Otherwise, it looks like we're pretty close to time on this dark and chilly evening. So I just want to say, so appreciate you joining and spending your evening listening to the three of us, sharing your thoughts and observations. And thank you so much, Arianna and Nick, for being with us.
Thank you.
We hope
Yeah.
that you will join us for our next Green Drinks, which is going to take place in December, not November. It will also be in person here.